Right, we're still discussing fast bowling, the art of being an effective, impactful fast bowler, given the challenges in the modern age. Who better than Shane Bond and Dale Steyn? And we touched upon a number of subjects when we chatted last time, guys, and I'd like to just go a little bit deeper and maybe talk inception, since it's fun. Fast bowling is about kids who grow up wanting to bowl fast, wanting to be mean or try and hit the batter. So there's an impression of what you want to do when you make it then to the professional level. And then we've heard things from you, Bondi, about parking ego aside, having to almost sometimes do thankless jobs, not glamorous jobs as batters tend to. And I'd like for you to perhaps just try and spend some time on whether that is the first challenge when you have to try and condition a fast bowler into understanding his job when it was very different, the idea of what he wanted to do when he grew up wanting to play the sport.
Yeah, it is. I think that there's a couple of parts to it. I've got a 16-year-old son who wants to be a cricketer. So him and his friends are always talking to me about fast bowling, and there's a couple of things that always stand out. They'll want me to have a look at an action and tell me if it's safe or not. And then the second part is, well, how do I bowl faster? And I always talk to bowlers like I wish I could run the 100 metres in 10 seconds, but I could never have done that. Everyone has a sort of probably a ceiling or a natural ability when it comes to bowling fast. So then it's not about talent. I tell my son it's about work ethic, training hard every day, being really purposeful in your training, working on your skills. Because ultimately, if you're going to be a really good bowler, you have to be able to put the ball where you want more often than not. And if you can do something with the ball on top of that, then obviously that's ideal. So that's what I talked to with my son and the bowlers around that sort of stuff as well. Now, in terms of the ego side of things, I think particularly as the format gets shorter, the one thing I tell my players is there's only one stat that I care about, and that's whether we win or lose. That's what we're judged on. And so forget about sort of sometimes the individual glory or the stats or the averages. They'll look back on a player's career and look at those, but people remember winners, and you want to win. That's the fun part about being a player, is lifting trophies and being in finals and playing those big games. And so in order to get there, you have to buy into that collective team ethos. Obviously you have players who take wickets and you have plans to take wickets on certain balls, but unless you work collectively together for the goal and the good of the team, then often it can all become undone. And that's just, sometimes it's difficult in franchise cricket in particular to do that. A little bit easier, I think, at the international game where you sort of have that commonality.
Dale?
Yeah, spot on. You talk about the ego side. I also grew up hitting a couple guys in the head, and I thought it was quite fun. I was doing it when I was 14. I started playing club cricket. And it was, I had this incredible feeling of power, for the first time in my life, where I was a 14-year-old, and wherever I went outside of cricket, I was like, yes, sir, thank you, sir, and very kind and very, whatever it was, gentleman-like. And then when I got onto a cricket field, I was playing against some of these same-aged men. I was hitting them in the head and I was flooring them and everything like that. And now, all of a sudden, as this 14-year-old, you've got this incredible power that you never really realized you had. And I kind of ran with that when I got into provincial cricket. And Daryl Cullinan was one of my first captains, and he noticed that. And I think he had a bit of a vendetta against a lot of ex-players. And he was like, I'm going to use this youngster to take out all these guys. So, and that was great. That was great, because when I started playing Test cricket, I used a lot of those skills. Out of nowhere, I'd just be like, "Okay, Graham, I'm coming around the wicket. I'm gonna try and rough him up a little bit. I'm gonna try and hurt him a little bit, and then I'm gonna go back over and I'm gonna try and take some wickets." So, everyone's road to how they play the game is different. And Bondi's so right. 99% of us have got this road where you have this idea that you are gonna knock guys over wickets, you're going to knock the poles over of the best players in the world, you're going to hit them in the head. But then once you get to the highest level, these guys are really, really, really good. And it's not that simple. But then other guys just have the knack of being able to do that, and there's only a handful of them that have really been able to do that. Like, you think Mitch Johnson against England, and a couple other guys. It doesn't happen all the time. Everybody normally has to go into this kind of bracket, and this is how we actually play. But every now and then you get a captain like Daryl Cullinan, and it was quite fun.
Knowing Daryl well, that is, I believe every word. I believe every word of that. And those skills still come into play when you have Test cricket, right? You still have surfaces that will allow you to bowl that way, and you could see that if there is a format that will allow for that, it's that. Of course, you have cricketers now that only want to, or not only, but primarily want to make a name playing T20 cricket, franchise cricket, and suddenly being fast is sometimes, it works against you. You worked with Umran, haven't you, Dale? And we thought this is the next big thing. And over a very short span of time, we've gone from Umran as a 150, 160 bowler will be an X factor to Umran can't control his pace. Umran doesn't have variations. So I'm just trying to think of what is the challenge when you get someone with such raw ability and you can't take him to the side of the impactful bowler. We can use all that raw talent to actually be effective.
So I think sometimes what happens is some guys get into the game and they get caught up by what's happening all around them. 60,000 people chanting and screaming, and you feel like, oh, I've got to run in and I've got to bowl 160 k's an hour, which is great. But if it goes against the game plan and it goes against the run of play, you're going to go for 60, 70, and that's not going to do your team any good. It's not going to even do you any good. And a couple games later, you might find yourself out of the team, and a season later, you might not even find yourself within any of the franchises. So you really have to harness that speed and make sure that you are using it well. Just like a Ferrari has 6 gears, you don't have to use all 6 gears. The Ferrari still can operate in first, second, and third. And fast bowlers are much the same. They've got to be able to know when to use their gears. And if they're just trying to go in 6th gear all the time, they're kind of doing themselves in a little bit.
But can it be actually taught or worked on, I'm thinking? You yourself, Dale, so effective in the longer formats, and you saw the rough end of it as an experienced bowler when batters were just so much more equipped to take down fast bowling. I mean, Mark Wood bowls fast and doesn't seem to have an effective slower ball. There could be a number of examples that you can think of. Can it actually be something that you can train or teach over time?
What, to bowl?
To use gears. Does everybody have the ability to actually use gears?
I think everyone should be able to do that. I think you learn that from Test cricket. That's where I learned a lot of it from, to be honest with you. I was like, cool, some days I rock up there on day 3 and it's just like I'm running into the wind, my legs are sore, I'm a bit stiff, and I'm just like, okay, I need to operate round about here to be successful today. But I always had this kind of, I knew at what speed I didn't want to come below, and that was roughly around the 138, 140. At my fastest, I didn't want to be slower than that. And then on my day that I was feeling good and I had a bit of wind behind me, then I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to ramp it up now, 145, maybe if I'm lucky, 150 plus. But you learn that through playing Test cricket and like having the whole day and how you manage 18 to 20 overs a day. Guys these days, when they're playing and they're practicing for 2020, they might only bowl 12 balls to 16 balls at a training session and be like, thanks, coach, I'm out, I'm done. And it's always tough to say, how are you going to learn how to go through those gears if all you've done is bowl, 12 balls, and then you've said, I'm out, I'm going to go and get an ice bath or a massage?
Bondi, same question?
Yeah. That's what made Dale such a great bowler, is that ability to turn it on and lift up that intensity. I found as a bowler, my role in the New Zealand team was to bowl quick, and I didn't really dial it down, and I suffered injuries for it, and I didn't play as long as what I should have. But that's what I loved about watching someone like Dale or Richard Hadley. That ability is in the moment to grab it. And I think then you come back to what we're doing now as coaching is, people will often ask, well, how do you coach a Bumrah or some of these guys? And they're the conversations you're having. You're talking about gears, you're talking about body language and how they present themselves. They're the little subtleties that you can have an influence on a current player and pass on the lessons that you learned to hope their growth will go up at a much greater rate. So Dale's right, there's a lot of talk now about bowling loading, and I remember as a kid I used to bowl lots of overs, and today there's limits and stuff like that, and it's that real balancing act. Everyone can handle different loads, but you have to be able to bowl to get better. You have to bowl, and even if you have to drop the intensity down in the nets and bowl longer, then that's still going to help you develop your skills over a period of time.
That's interesting, because the old school thought, I don't know if it's old school, correct me if I'm wrong, is you'll get control when you play longer form cricket. And I'm picking that up from what both of you are saying. And there was a an opinion not too long ago about how Bumrah's success in white ball cricket came only after he actually played a complete season in Ranji Trophy. And yet now there's enough divided opinion on whether bowlers like Mayank Yadav or Umran Malik should be made to play red ball cricket, because that's not necessarily going to take them to the next level or make them advance in bowling T20 cricket. In case of Mayank, it's maybe his body won't even allow it. So how do you get control when that's what the challenge is, to try and play long form cricket, which is supposed to give you control? Bondi?
Great question. Look, everybody's tolerance for bowling is different. I think that's what I've learnt over my time. An Adam Milne could handle 30 overs a week, a Neil Wagner could handle 60. And you only learn that through writing it down and working out, through once you have an injury, well, how much am I doing? There's all that science that goes in behind that as well. You can't tell a player what format they want to play. For most players you'll ask out there, they would love to earn their test cap. Test cricket, I still think, is the pinnacle, but obviously the compromise often now is injury. Each individual has to make their own decisions. But what I do know is the more you bowl in the middle in situations for those longer spells, you sort of work out how to self-correct. When things aren't going right, the technical things you have to do to get yourself back on track, you sort of learn. And in the end, all like Dale and I will come and go as coaches. So you have to end up to sort of to self-coach, to understand how you take what gets the best out of you. And if you can do that, then you can become a very, very good bowler.
I think you're working, Dale, aren't you, with so many bowlers now that aren't playing long-form cricket or just cannot play, whether it's T. Natarajan or it's Richard Gleeson or Khalil Ahmed, and a lot of guys who just can't play, and yet they're expected to have that control when needed on a high stage.
Yeah, my coaching career has been strange. I haven't really managed to catch one of the good bowlers just yet. And I, with respect to the guys that I've worked with, a lot of them actually play just 2020 cricket, almost. Marco Janssen's probably the one guy that is playing all three formats that I'm quite close with. And I work quite closely with him, even as a friend, because I actually see his potential in the longest format. And I can see what his worth is going to be over years and years to come too. So he doesn't really have to worry about many things. But it's just about having a chat to him and talking to him about what I feel he needs to do sometimes. But I haven't managed to catch some of those guys that have played a lot of test matches, from a Balti to a Rabada or somebody like that. I've got a lot of these T20 specialists, and I kind of just let them do their thing, really. I'm more of a cheerleader when I kind of go to these games. They know what works for them. They know how their body operates. And I just try and pick up on all of those little things, and then I'm just reminding them. Do this, do that. This is what you said. This is what you said works. And I make sure that I make these environments that allows them to succeed. But yeah, probably Marco Janssen's the one guy that plays Test cricket that I work with the closest. And I try and keep a good relationship with him.
Bondi is the one who hogs all the good bowlers, isn't he? Or he makes them, all the great ones. There's Bumrah, Mick Johnson, Malinga, the list can go on. But on that note, maybe let's talk about experienced bowlers who find ways to reinvent themselves or stay relevant. I can think of no one better than Pat Cummins right now, who seems to have a second coming in his T20 skills. At a point we thought there's no way Pat Cummins is effective white ball bowler or IPL bowler in particular, as good as he is in red ball cricket, and that's changed, hasn't it? So maybe we can talk about, Bondi, the players that I've mentioned that you worked with, and maybe Cummins as an example of what's there to learn and what you take away from that.
Yeah, I think that's to me is the role of the coach. Is you talk about the Bolts and the Bumrahs and these guys, and I always go, look, my role as a coach is to try and help somebody get better. Otherwise I don't really serve a purpose. And one of the great frustrations I had as a player was the better I got, the less I got coached. And so you're sort of left of your own devices, and it was sort of, oh, he knows what he's doing. But I actually, and having had a level of success, you can become quite stubborn in the way that you do things. Whereas actually, I think John Bracewell was my best coach, and the reason is because he challenged me. If I would have taken some wickets, but if I didn't bowl well, he would say, look, you haven't bowled well, and these are the reasons why. And that would really get my goat, and I would want to prove a point, which was the art of coaching, right? And so now with those sorts of bowlers, like you've got to be curious. What are the skills we can add? And it can be subtle things like Bumrah has been around body language, about his planning and preparation, about how you do all those things to just get better every year. With Bolty, it would be things like his run-up angle would get wider as he got on. So it's little habits that you're trying to pick up, or technical changes, or little habits that kick in that you think you're trying to rectify. So my job is always there to push these players, and that's what I really enjoyed last year at Rajasthan with Ravi Chandran Ashwin, is he's a super curious bowler. He was always looking for something new, prepared to give it a go in the nets, and then he'd take it out in the middle. And that's what I'm trying to do as a coach, is go, I want you to develop some new skills or a new field, practice it, and then take it into the middle, and let's see what happens. And sometimes with bowlers there's a bit of a fear, or what if it doesn't go right? And I'm like, well, what if it goes right? How exciting is that if you've got a new tool in your toolbox that you can pull out? And to me, that's the fun part of coaching.
You've obviously coached a lot longer than Dale has, Bondi, and I think that's a great point you make of the messaging from coaches to even experienced players. I think Ishant said this, that for a long time, they broke down Ishant and said, right, the thing is that you can swing the ball. When you don't swing the ball, we need you to still try and go full, but you drop pace, so that's what you need to fix. And Ishant said this in an interview to us, that everyone's telling me that, but I didn't understand what the solution is. I know what the problem is. And then he worked with Jason Gillespie and he said, I need you to try and hit the batter's knee as hard and fast as you can. And he said something as simple as that made me understand it. And whether sort of through your experiences, if you could sort of narrate more situations of how sort of bowlers receive information. There's always the language barrier when you come to India. Even experienced bowlers sometimes need to be told in a certain way, right?
Yeah, and I think there's two parts, and Dale will talk about this, the trust between you and a bowler. And obviously you walk into franchise, you might have 10 days before you start doing work, and it's a lot just to put all their faith in you. So you've got to develop that relationship over a period of time. You've got a whole lot of data now, and as long as you do your diligence and there's enough of the data, it will tell a story. And so you can present them some stuff that says, hey, look, this is what I've noticed. What do you see? And then sometimes it just takes time. I mean, I remember when someone like Lasith Malinga's pace was dropping down, he was getting hit a little bit, and I'd sort of talked to him about, well, what about bowling round the wicket? With his angle, it would be challenging. And I talked about it with him for 2 seasons, and he was like, nah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And then I had a chat with Mahela, and so Mahela went and had a conversation, and Marley was struggling a little bit, and then he thought, well, I've got to a point where I've got to try something else, and he did, and he had some success. So, sometimes it just takes where a bowler's, struggling and they're looking for something new. It takes a little bit of persistence with a coach. I don't think as a coach you can come in and go, well, this is the way you've got to do it. And again, sometimes you've just got to drop hints, and then you've got to sit back and just see what's sort of unravels. But I think what I always encourage my players is, look, be really clear about what you're practicing, be prepared to try something new, and then go and give it a go in a game, and you'll get my backing to do that. Whether it works or not, to me that's an exciting part of as a player, is to be able to see, have you got something else to offer.
Dale, anything to add?
No, I think go to the next one. Bondi's spot on.
Right.
I'm picking up all these things secretly. I'm writing all these things down.
Good man. I'll send you a recording. You don't need to work so hard. But data is another interesting one, because I know enough coaches who said this. You have to be really careful with how much information you give different individuals, and sometimes you could really mess with their head. So how do you know?
I think you've got a continuum, Ranik. I think you've got some players will want none, and some players will want lots. And it's understanding that personality type. I don't think you can have everything, and I don't think you can have nothing. So as a coach, when I have my meetings, I try and give them what I think is the bare bones. So this is the bare bones of what you need going into a game. And then if you want more, you can go and get that if you want to. And if you don't want any more, that's okay. And then in and around your bowler on the field, you put some support with the captain or another bowler, so that when the pressure really comes on, they've got someone to come over and sort of control that mental space, offer them a little bit of feedback around what the plan was, just keep them calm, help them make decisions. And then, at certain points, you've got to trust your gut. So I think it's a combination of, you've got to know some of the data, and you've also got to blend it together with trusting your gut. And trusting your gut sort of means you get a feel for what's going to happen. You watch enough and play enough cricket, you go, I just feel like this batsman's going to go, so what am I going to do to counter that? And I suppose that's batsman premeditating a bowler who bowls short, then goes, I think this bowler's now going to bowl full. And now they've been hit, they're going to bowl slow, and then they're going to bowl short. And I think batsmen do that with bowlers. They guess and sort of you have that instinct. So it's how do you blend the data in with your gut instinct?
Yeah, I think Ambati Raidu said that to me, that the role of the analyst was to prepare me on what to expect, right? And that's what he sort of leveled it to, saying that's all I needed. This guy, this is what he usually does, so I'm giving you, a little time to think about what you're likely to get tomorrow. So in my head, I'm working with that. Dale, anything on this, on data to add?
Yeah, I think on the data thing, I mean, we've got Gaurav that works with us, and like he would come to me and he would say, I'd go to him and ask him something as simple as like, how many slow balls do people bowl? What's the average? You want to know all the averages, like over, because that's how the game kind of works. It's like averages, And I'll use like a small example. He came to me and he said, Umran Malik was bowling on average one slow ball every 24 balls that he bowled, whereas Bhuvi was bowling 12 slow balls every 24 balls that he bowled. And then you look at the one slower ball that Umran Malik bowled, and his the strike rate for that was like 30 or whatever it was. And it was just then going to suggest to him, listen, this is what you're bowling. You're only bowling one, and all the other ones are going for runs. Can you try and just add one more in? And let's see if that makes a difference. And this is quite a funny story, because I went and I said that to him, and he said, oh, that's a great point. Thank you very much. If Bhuvi's doing it, I'll try it. And we were sitting in a game in Mumbai, and we were watching this game, and it was the perfect time for him to bowl a slow ball. And he ran in, and I turned around and I said to Murali, I think he's going to bowl a slow ball. And he ran in and he bowled a Yorker, and he knocked the stumps out all over the place. And the camera turned and it pointed towards me and Murali as if the coaches had come up with this amazing thing. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes the master is the guy that's actually on the field. I'm telling him to bowl a slow ball, and he ran and bowled a gas 155 Yorker and knocked the stumps out of the ground. So sometimes the stats and that doesn't really matter. But there's definitely a place for it in helping players know what other players are also doing that helps them get better. And in that case, it's something that I think Umran Malik can certainly work on. But he proved me wrong that day, and he just said, "This is my skill. I'm going to do this."
I think Bondi said when we did this in the pre-show that he doesn't quite like the term, "I'm going to try and bowl my best ball." So I think connected with that, Dale, since you played a large chunk of the IPL when AB was just, well, I don't need to tell you how he was going, but you had a bowler like yourself, experienced, successful. And De Villiers is just taking you down. You're bowling at a pressure situation of a game. And you'd think, because I have heard other coaches say this, that no, if they know their best ball, that's what they need to go to. And then Bondi, of course, said that. So I wonder when he said that, whether you found that to be at odds with, something that you've learned before.
I mean, I think I want bowlers to speak a better bowling language, really. I almost feel like when you just say, I'm going to bowl my best ball and whatever's going to happen, I almost sometimes feel like it's a little bit of a cop-out. You've kind of just like, you've narrowed
100%.
yourself down to one
it's
kind
like
of thing.
It's like the batters. It's the batter's equivalent of I'll play my natural game.
Yeah, or like, I do my processes and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, guys, surely there's more to it. There's definitely more in your brain than just something as simple as that. But yeah, I mean, I almost didn't have an answer to AB. He's that kind of guy that he knew me, he's played against me, and he just saw exactly what was coming. And I did kind of think to myself, I got to land this ball. But even when I landed it, he still had the better skill to be able to get me away on that day. And sometimes I feel like I should have probably gone against what my best ball was, because he would have expected one thing and I could have gone the complete opposite and bowled the bluff. Yeah. So, yeah, you learn these things as you play,
Bondi?
What I meant by that, Radek, is if you listed as a bowler all the balls that you've got, a bowler will have, bouncer, Yorker, wide Yorker, slow ball, from over and around the wicket. So you've got all these list of deliveries that you can bowl. And then you think, well, I'm bowling to Virat Kohli. Where does Virat want the ball? What are his best three shots? And so your fourth best ball might be better than his fourth best shot. So that's what I'm saying. Well, then the plan might be that's the ball I've got to bowl. It's not my best ball, but it's the best ball against his shot that's going to line up. And to me, that's where you got to get to as a bowler, is go, look, I've got this skill set that I've got, all these balls that I can bowl, and I've got to keep working on making all of them better. And then it's how I apply those balls in the sequence I do against the batter, knowing their strengths and where they want to score. And then I think the next step on top of that, where the game can really go, is how do I use the field to manipulate the batsman's thinking? So I move these fielders, these players not in play, I'm moving this guy, the batsman's thinking, why is he moving? And if I can create a little bit of doubt in their mind, when I miss, because the batsman's not really expecting what he's going to get, then he misses out. That ball that would go for 6, maybe it gets clothed down for 1. And that's what excites me about as coach, that, those set plays, moving fielders. I think we'll get to the time where a captain will put his hand up with a number and everyone will move positions, or certain players will move, and the game will get like that. And I think that's what I'm excited for as a coach, and where I think, bowling can go to.
I like that. Aren't we already seeing versions of that? I think England have started it. Analysts do it. Afghanistan literally had which bowler to be bowling next over.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is the actual on-field. We talk a lot about moving players who are either in play or not in play to create distractions for players. I think we'll see fast bowlers who might run off 3 different types of run-ups. They might be off a 20 metre, a 10 metre, a 15 metre, so batsmen get a different feel for it. They're the little things that I think, batting 10, 20 years ago, if you said batsmen are going to turn around left-handed and whack it over mid-wicket, you probably would have laughed. And I still think bowling's catching up to, okay, why can't a bowler bowl off a 10 metre run-up and then a 20 metre run-up? So the batsman's timing's all off and do all sorts of different stuff. So to me, there's scope for bowling to be better. And I think the fielders and the field placement's a big part of it. The biggest challenge with cricket is you do all your training in the nets and you don't actually get the chance to often practice with fieldsmen until you get out into the heat of the game, and then you're under the pump. And so you sort of forget about it. And I think that's where you can take the next step in cricket.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, bowlers really don't benefit as much bowling in the nets as batters do. Bowlers would actually be better off in an open net or a match simulation.
I think as a bowler, you don't get that feeling of getting smacked through the covers for 4. So mentally, you're almost not training. So I think when you then walk out into an IPL and the first one actually gets blazed through the covers, that's when you see the glaze come over the bowler's eyes and they're like, wow, the reality kicks in here that I'm getting smacked. And I think, part of your preparation as a bowler in the nets is like trying to prepare yourself for when things go poorly, rather than sort of dealing with it. And so as a coach, you're trying to put those strategies in place with your captain and your senior players on the field to give clarity of decision making and getting bowlers just to understand, like batsmen do when they undo their gloves, to go, you got to consider the last ball, but really I've just got to focus on the next ball. Take the information from the ball that I just bowled and focus on this one ball, because it can all unravel real fast if you don't.
Yeah, I'm taking notes as well, Dale. I'm loving this with Bondi. But just we're wrapping it up now. I like the sort of conversation of, no matter how much you plan and how good you are, that's how the game is as it stands today. I think I'm very curious if you want to add something on Bondi's on where it can evolve into for bowlers. But as the game stands today, sometimes no matter what you do, batter's going to get the better of you. And I'm sure it hurts, doesn't it? You've got humans there, they're bowling perhaps according to plan, bowling their best ball for that situation. Knicks go for 4, you're losing the game. I'm sure you felt it at some point that, damn, it's hurting. And that over then just went from 4, 8, 10, 15 to 20 or whatever it was.
Yeah, but the conversations that you're always having with your bowlers is, guys, you're never out of the game, and don't give up on the over. There's nothing worse than going for 18 or 20 is bad. Okay, going for 30 is worse, because to the last 2 balls you were just like, oh well, I'm done. And then you end up losing the game by 6 or 10 runs, and you think, well, let's backtrack. Because the game is won by small margins. And that's what we're always trying to tell our guys. Is like, guys, I don't care if you go for 20. Just don't go for 26, or don't go for 24. It's going to happen, And I think we also starting to speak a language where, like I said earlier, there was a time when Polly would run in and bowl 10 overs for 30 or for 25 runs. And if somebody went for 50, you'd be like, wow, someone's gone for 50. We don't talk about that anymore. We talk about impact. And when you can almost break up a 4-over spell in a 2020, in 4 different occasions. One in the power play, first one outside the power play, one in the middle, and one in the death, And those are 4 different occasions that you can potentially win. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to walk away with 2 for 20. You might walk away with 2 for 50, but the last over you defended 10. or you defended 8 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So you're talking about moments more than anything else. And I think the bowlers is now starting to buy into this. So they're not feeling that pressure where they go, I need to go out there today and I need to get 2 for 30 or 2 for 20 to feel like I've done my job. Like a batter has to get a 50 or 100 or whatever the runs are.
All right, brilliant. I'm going to just wrap this up now. Dale, last question to you. If you had to look back today and give your 25-year-old self some advice, or 27-year-old self some advice, bowling IPL, and like you said, right, and I think you've given me some of it when it comes to AB, what would you have done differently? What would you tell young Dale Steyn today with everything that you know?
You know, my last season, I said, you know what, this was my last season. I played at the, whatever it was, the Mzansi League in South Africa. And I said, I'm going to actually try and attack the stumps a little bit more, because I was so good at bowling like 4th or 5th stump test matches that I very rarely actually got a lot of guys out bowled in 2020. I had to go against everything that I did because I was scared my economy rate was going to go up, but I did an experiment and I was like, okay, I'm going to go for it. And strangely enough, my economy rate stayed the same. I actually got a couple more wickets. If I could go back to a 25-year-old Dale, I'd say to him, you know, do what the team needs you to do, but if you feel the time to strike, you strike. You know, just don't go against the run of play. Don't bowl a bouncer with, you know, third man and fine leg up. But have that mentality to try and take a couple more wickets. Yeah, that's pretty much what I would have said to that young man.
Brilliant. Bondi, for you, I really want to know, since you worked so much with Bumrah, and he seems like the ideal sort of standard, the gold standard, what you want bowlers to live up to. If you have to make a checklist of what constitutes the most important elements for someone who will grow into being an outstanding bowler, when you see them young, now that you know what they end up looking like once they've done it, what's that checklist entail?
I think like work every day, like just that continuous improvement on your fitness, on your skills. That's what he does. He does the preparation off the field, so he will spend the time looking at the batsman, understanding his own game. He listens, so he will take feedback. You know, we reflect on performances and he'll consider it. He won't always agree, but he'll always consider it. And I think that's a big one, is just taking it, reflecting and considering all that sort of stuff. Body language, which has always been a work on for Booms, and I think that's improved. And I think, you know, he's just a player who has huge self-belief. And I think that's one thing as a bowler or as a player sometimes you can't give someone, that inner belief that you're good enough. Now that can come through performance, which, you know, every player that makes an IPL team or a national team just wants that one performance where they feel part of it. But the great players have this, you know, and Dale was a great player, and he talked about that white line fever, this huge confidence in their own ability, that no matter the moment, that they're up for the moment. And Booms is up for the moment. He loves that big moment and wants to put himself in there. And that's the one, to Dale's point in that question you asked Dale, the one thing I would have told my old self is, don't worry about it. Don't be so worried and too scared. Because I often hear bowlers now say, why don't you set this field? And they go, but what if he nicks it? Or what if it goes over there? And that's what I wish I'd taken out of my game is, well, so what, you know? It's just a game of cricket. Just relax. You've trained, you've worked hard. Just go out and absolutely be free and let go and relish every part of it.
I have relished every part of this conversation. It was fast bowling gold dust. Thank you, Shane Bond. Thank you, Dale Steyn.